You've all seen it, you've all heard of it, you've probably been living it for the past 4 years, or maybe longer than that. I'm not sure how long Nerdcore goes past, but I guess yeah, there we are, Nerdcore. It's about Nerdcore, everybody. Nerdcore! Hey buddies, it's Will of DAGames, and this is a question that a lot of people have been asking about. What is the current state of the nerdcore industry at the moment? And while I don't have a concrete answer, I feel like I might have some speculation. For those of you who are completely unfamiliar with what nerdcore is, it's an industry and community founded by making music, fan-made materials, etc., based on video games. I suppose it expands further out there though, but I think you would call that otacore then, because otacore is more like anime, and then there's movies and stuff. I think otacore is like a branch, like an entire whole compass, and then you've got like little subgenres like nerdcore, animecore, like... Basically, it's part of the medium of fan-made stuff, most notoriously in the form of music. And if you're no stranger to our channel, you know that we've done a lot of video game music. However, there's a lot of speculation on what really constitutes as a popular video in the nerdcore industry. And can you actually get popular over nowadays with video game music? And the answer is yes and no. I find that most of the time it comes down to the actual game, which unfortunately, if you look at the general category, there's not really a lot to choose from. If you do everything else, it tends to kind of like dim down, etc. Through my time of DAGames, I've actually seen quite a few videos talking about the subject matter. I think it's called chain base. This stuff would be considered the chain base. What that basically means is it's a chained community. So you've got people like Baldi, FNAF, Bendy, Tattletale, Hello Neighbor, all this sort of stuff here in the independent scene, but very obscure and very, very popular, and however interact with each other in each individual community class as a whole. That's what some have referred to as a chain base. This isn't just one particular person, there's several who've called it that. Don't know whether it spawned from a particular person, much like any invention does, I guess, but there you go. And during like the years of 2014 to about 2018 to early 2019, things started to look pretty triumphant for the nerdcore industry. It started to look pretty prosperous. And come to mention it, I think it still is. However, I've seen it slowly decrease over time as well. And I don't know whether that's because it's right now January and February. It's sort of a period of time where things are usually slow nowadays. But I have sort of noticed that anytime I do a particular video that's not within the chain base, it doesn't get the viewership. And apparently I'm not the only one, there's several who are in that same conundrum too. So I suppose the question really comes down to, is it really a viable community right now to earn revenue off? I know, right? Questions from me about money. And I don't really like money. But I know several people do. It's kind of what people get as a goal. Money is how we live. Money is how we get a roof over our head and have food, etc. I never like to use money per se as a, you know, a forefront fuel. I don't like that whatsoever. I'd like to think that if anything, money is more perceived as a goal, and your fuel is the passion in doing so. And that's just my consensus. Whereas there's several plethora of nerdcore musicians have very, very different alternatives. Take Bendy. I mean, Bendy kind of thrived for so long, and yet somehow, like, it manages to develop some kind of popularity, whereas it's not as big as it used to be by a long shot. And that's just any basis with video games. Same with Baldi. That was at the peak of its prime when it released, and it's sort of dying down. But it's not out of the picture. Whereas I've seen memes come and go, they've sort of become relics in a way. At the height of their moment when they're out, and then maybe about a week or two down the line, completely banished from the universe. Probably remembered, but you'd have to look down that hole. So the nerdcore industry is not exactly too reliable, whereas it's not exactly dangerous either. And I think the main basis of it is, if you're comfortable with making a song, do it. At this day and age, it should never be about popularity. At the end of the day, you're getting stuff out there, and popularity is a measure of how much you really want. Whether that be just 100 people in a room or 1 million people in a stadium, you're gonna get a crowd. And by posting stuff online, something is going to be viewed. It is for the sole purpose of having it viewed. If you really wanted it just to stick with your family, then you would have probably put that on private or unlisted. Either one of those is taken. But when we publicize a video, we're basically aiming it towards the mass audience online. And when we think about what we've done as far as nerdcore industry, we've made a song, we want it to get viewed. The measure of that is what tests people's patience. So if you're expecting 1 million views on your first song and you're wanting to get up there, you can, in the nicest way of putting it, just forget about it. Whereas at the same time, if you're expecting little, then I mean, the less you expect, the more accomplishment you're gonna have in the beginning. It's why we set ourselves milestones and goals and all that sort of stuff. But choosing what song goes well for popularity, you know, is a real math to think about. But there is a way of gaining more views based on what is currently popular at the time. Some people like to put their entire leg in and stay in the community and never come out. Some people like to dip their toes in and move on. There are so many different wrongs and rights with every single one of them. By dipping your whole leg into a community anytime you do something else, they've basically grabbed a hold of your leg. You ain't leaving anytime soon. And the algorithm doesn't care either, apparently. Well, if you just dip your toes into another community, you're not really engaging them enough to keep them, so every project going around would be very sporadic in terms of viewership. It wouldn't exactly be the best idea, and that's why more people go towards the chain base. The chain base is that big community where if one song you've made matches that, the next song you make then matches that same one, the same audience is going to carry over. Which leads me on to those people who want to make original music. And what I mean by original music is nerdcore music is still original music at its heart, but it's tailor-made towards a pre-existing IP. Whereas what I mean by original is original as in not based on games, based on your own mindset, with no knowledge of any other existing IP, and it's just your own story. Which one tackles on top? Which one? And it's still nerdcore. At the end of the day, nerdcore is still the biggest thing. Because when you think about YouTube, people are using the search tool to look at their favorite concepts and projects. Music isn't the only thing that they will have in their mind. They'll probably want a channel that does gameplay videos. They'll probably want a channel that does theories. They want a channel that does beauty, fashion, Lego, crime investigation, all sorts of different things. So when they search Bendy, they're not in there just to look for songs. They're looking for everything else in the spectrum because that's their peak interest. They want Bendy. And that is it. The problem with this is once you've dipped your toes in and they find that project and they love what they've seen from you, they will go and subscribe to you and probably expect more of that same content. The problem with that is, what if you never really wanted to just make that kind of content? Like ourselves, we don't always want to make that kind of content. We want to always try and stay diverse. Really, I think during at that point, it's all about brand advertisement, how you advertise yourself in the video that they're watching. And I always like to think at the beginning of the video, try and just mention that you do more than just that, so they know what they're getting into. And if they still don't know what they're getting into, then that's just audience stupidity at that point. Point is, you saved your ass. That's the main way of putting it. They come for that material, that's it. And I kind of feel like, especially with the nerdcore industry, you can get chained in super hard. And it's not right. Do I blame that on the algorithm? Sort of. Do I blame that on ourselves? Yes. Do I blame that on the audience? Yes, absolutely. I think where their main problem is they still subscribe to somebody and expect that kind of content without doing their research. And I think that also comes down to us not really giving enough research to these people, not enough information to go off, and not speaking about what we actually want to create so much more. Instead, it's kind of a cesspool. A lot of people want to appease their audience. The audience wants the content creator to do what they ask. And the algorithm will put out whatever both of them fight about. And that's kind of the thing that goes out. It took us at least 5 years to kind of make an original song even be able to reach 50,000 views within a month. Now that's still really, really good when you come to think about it. That's not bad at all compared to a lot of people who might not even get that reach. And where we went right was because we stood up against it. We feel like because we made a stance on it, and we decided to go against that system because it did used to have a cesspool. There used to be that drama that happened. But if I'd not have done that, and if I'd not have made the adamance of making original music and educating that there's more to it, it wouldn't have opened people's eyes to see that that content existed. If I continued just working on FNAF songs, and if I just continued working on Bendy songs and stayed silent, those original songs would just be completely underneath the water. But because there's so much power and emotion and protest in those albums, it's what got us there. And I'm finding more and more nowadays that if you delve out and do an original piece, it might actually do well. And the best way to do that is look at your audience, look at the aesthetic that they're used to, and then make an album that feels familiar. That was easy for us because a lot of our music is rock and metal. Well, Iris is just the same, it's just rock and metal. Kind of the same writing process, just without the games. I'm seeing a lot of other people making original albums right now. I know two people off the top of my head, CG5 and Oreo. Charlie is making an original album, I think it was made, but either way, he had that in mind, but he never really changed his concrete style. That was always his style, and it fit him so well, and he knew how to sort of algorithmically combine both the nerdcore music with his original music to sound very similar, but teach the prospect that it's not about the game. Same way with Oreo, she's working on that massive project Clover. It's basically an electro swing album, and with Bendy that was very electro swing. So if you take electro swing into factor, something that the audience is very familiar with, they're gonna jump on it. Plus, at the end of the day, electro swing is a super satisfying genre. It's a guilty pleasure for so many people, so who wouldn't do that? Whereas I feel like if you're a metal musician and your original album is some kind of pop funk kind of album, I don't think it'll do quite as well. And if it does, it probably had to take a lot of time to adjust to that. So for the people who start off making original albums from the very beginning and don't do nerdcore whatsoever, are gonna find it a ton harder. Because who's searching for you, really? Who's really searching for your original story when they have no idea who you are? You'd have to expect them to mind read at that point, which is sad, because any kind of music is great. And I think, you know, you should always be able to create whatever you want, and if you weren't in there for the viewership, make it, and that's absolutely awesome. But if you're expecting views, I'd really start thinking about where to put your eggs. And don't put them all just in one basket either. Try and find so many different avenues. Also, it pays to learn your audience as well as they grow older, because let's face it, a lot of content creators have noted that most of their audience is kids. So they have full knowledge that their audience is kids. With that being said, they're gonna grow. They're gonna grow up, they're gonna get older, and they might turn out to be complete shitheads. They might not even have had any lessons throughout this stuff, and so they're gonna take that mentality. And there's a certain point in age where you just stop growing, and you just stop, I don't know, you just stop developing your brain. I think it's like 25 or 26, I can't remember, but there's a certain point where your brain stops developing. Like, you start repeatedly doing traits that, and if you don't whittle that down immediately, it will stay there forever. Either forever or really hard to get over. So I think it's super valuable that content creators of a stature, such as, you know, 100,000 subscribers to 1 million subscribers to there on out, should be educating their audience a ton more. By educating the audience on what we feel, and by educating what they do as a principle, and by them educating to us what they do, by talking about this, it helps understand everything. So then maybe you might be able to start going, hey, I've got this original piece that I've been working on. Alternatively, you can go just the PR route and just make nerdcore music, stay away for a long time, and then go, new album coming soon. That is possible. That is totally possible, but I think that only really gets away with like people who are super high right now. However, other projects kind of need a lot of time and a lot of news and a lot of PR and a lot of nightmares. It's a hard grind, and I'm pretty sure afterwards, you know, the results will speak for themselves. Point being, at the end of the day, original music has nothing on nerdcore when it comes to the popularity on YouTube because of the way people search stuff. They look for an interesting topic and they go for it. The reason why I say the chain base is gonna get that viewership and not the rest of the games out there, there's a very specific reason. Kids. Simply put, kids are chained to this stuff. They don't like anything else. They just like this stuff. Having a child myself and being around so many children in my life, that's exactly what it is. They just like that thing. What I also know about children is instead of shunning them, you need to educate them. And in my time, in the early stages of DAGames, I used to shun them. And that was a very horrible thing for me to do because I don't know, I got personally angry and I didn't see them as a kid because all I saw was a profile picture. I assumed teenager to adult. I assumed maybe they could take it because it is the internet and it's not really a place for kids at the end of the day. So what are we gonna do? But over these years, I've been able to learn that kids need to learn and adapt. So instead of shunning them, educate them. And they might not look interested, but it's amazing when you get to talk to them and they will take that information in regardless. They'll sit there and go, this big guy talked to me. And they'll know exactly what he said, or she said, or it said, and they'll take it with them. It'll be in the back of their minds regardless. It's a form of education. So I do feel like if you're gonna be in a big giant industry, I think this goes for any celebrity, and I think this goes for every nerdcore artist or musician or just any big public figure. It's very important that you take your role seriously. You gotta sort of understand what position you're in. There are several thousands upon thousands of people looking up to you. Because I've seen communities where several just leave them alone and nothing gets done, and while the content creator is happy, the community is in a ruckus. Looking on the overworld kind of perspective here, just looking on the overworld, if I was in a content creator's shoes, I probably wouldn't care. But looking at the overworld side of things, I can see what the result of a butterfly effect can do. Somebody's gonna do something, or just do nothing at all, and it sets off a chain of dominoes that just collapse. It's up to big content creators to support their community and educate their community. That is a responsibility that comes with it, and I feel as though it's heavily underlooked. On a personal perspective, and no malice intended for any content creator who feels like this is a struggle, because I've been there too. I know exactly why a lot of people don't, because interacting with a community can be very stressful. Being by everybody's shoes can be super anxiety ridden. It can be awful. And if you share too much, they can take advantage of that. That's another thing, communities can take advantage of that. So there's a way of doing it without actually approaching them personally, which is by making these kind of videos that helps educate it. This is why I do vlogs. It's like I want to get closer to my audience, but within an arm's distance, because I unfortunately have been dealt with the crisis of having a nightmare when you give somebody too much information. It's a nightmare. I feel like this went onto a different kind of tangent, but I don't either, because it kind of correlates. Delving back into it, is it an easy job? No, it's not an easy job at all. It's worth investing in an already existing IP because it shows that you are a fan of something. It shows that you love something and you're wanting to commemorate that project to somebody. In turn, that also helps the game as a whole. Bendy was absolutely nothing without the gameplay and Build Our Machine, and then the rest of the songs that continued afterwards that formed that chain basis. I started the fire, and then everybody went further with it, because that's how promoting a game is nowadays. It usually helps if you're a big time person already, and you're able to do that sort of thing. It helps the game industry. They are in turn appreciative of you. You get closer with those content creators and you get closer with these developers and you get to see their life, and maybe you wanted to make a game in the future and now you've got contacts. Now you know what to do. Guiltily, a lot of people do nerdcore music for the notice me senpai kind of analogy. I want that developer to notice me. Now, I can't name anybody who has that, but I'm pretty sure out of the 1 billion people out there, I'm sure there's one. And is that a bad thing? No. Everybody wants exposure. It's why we even put it on YouTube in the first place. It's to expose. But as of right now, is it as valuable as it used to be a few years ago? Personally, I see a decline. What do I wish could have been better about the nerdcore industry? A celebration of all video games rather than just the chain base. But that also means having to involve several hundreds, thousands, and millions of people wanting to search for that material, and we can't force that to happen. People don't go look for Doom songs. They'll probably go look for the Doom soundtrack, so maybe it'd be worth putting in your meta tag so it kind of correlates, so you might be able to get that viewership. But it's not guaranteed either. It's a game, so it would technically be a nerdcore song, but nobody's searching for Doom. Nobody's searching for Outlast. Nobody's searching for Horizon Zero Dawn. Nobody's searching for Cyberpunk fan-made material. Nobody's searching for Rayman. Nobody's searching for Crash Bandicoot fan-made material, because these people love the main source throughout, and they're only there for that main game. They're not there to watch somebody else play it. They're there to celebrate the game normally and play the game themselves. There's certain games that have like a blacklist, not in terms of like you're not allowed to stream it. It's more so a blacklist of they're the kind of games that nobody would really play online or search for others playing games online. They're a kind of game that they'd enjoy in their own time. So God of War was one of those things. Doom was one of those things as well. So it's kind of why the chain base is the only option for a lot of nerdcore musicians. And that does not mean you're tied there either. You're not tied to this. You can still go out and do the other things, but you can't guarantee everybody to be searching for that kind of thing. How do you make sure you stay on top of it then? You look at the trends at the time, and then you go and make a song. That's usually how people go. My case is usually very different because I've already made a pre-made ton of songs throughout my life at this point. Nowadays, I've got a large memory bank of material that I could use, but I'm waiting for the game to come because my way of doing it is having an original piece from the beginning, so it could always have been put outside of a gaming catalog and put on its own. But if it does have a game that has in mind, it can easily be transferred. That's how Iris was able to do well, and that's how Flash Drive was able to do so well, was because I always made these ideas off of scratch without having to think of a video game. But then I put that idea into a video game, and it makes a pretty crazy thing because music is a puzzle piece. You can do whatever you want with music. You can put it to an original, you can put it to a nerdcore, but normally people look for how liable it is and how reliant it is. Which sucks in a way because not many people are doing it for a passionate sake, and that's why I worry for the next generation of musicians. I worry that their headspace is too far into the money rather than into the actual passion of making music, which is something to bear in mind. Remember, you have to have a passion for this kind of thing because the money is gonna make the music stink. If you have that on your mind, that is all you're gonna have is a stinky corporate-made song that was shut out. If you were to do that for an original, then I mean it wouldn't matter because if you were really trying to appease the algorithm, you wouldn't be making an original song. At the end of the day, you kind of be going for a nerdcore one, so I feel that's null and void and self-explanatory. Whether it's this stigma that nerdcore has, where you're finding the trend, you make a song, and you're not really thinking about whether you want to make it a memorable song. You're just looking at the algorithm and trying to find the pinpoints for it. Now, there are several nerdcore musicians who don't follow that. I know so many, in fact, nearly all of my nerdcore friends do this strictly out of passion, so I have no worry about that. Everybody loves what they do, but money is never an evil thing if you want to live. But I can't exactly recommend it as reliable on both monetarily fine and mental well-being fine, because they never seem to match up unless you were greedy and your money was there and you were just happy to make that money regardless. But then that rubs off on a community, and a community sees you as money hungry, and then they don't respect you, and then that's your money gone. And then everybody's like, oh fuck, what do I do? So then ideally at the end of the day, then your mental well-being is shot regardless. Whereas if you're super passionate about something and you're not trying to appease the algorithm, you're probably going the opposite direction. You're not gonna get the money anyway, so you're never gonna have that balance. Unless you're super lucky and you're able to just be really talented, super passionate about what you do, and also able to obtain that money. That is very hard to do. 1 in a million probably get that opportunity. So it's better to sort of weigh out your options. Do you really think this is a viable option for you? Do you want to do this at the end of the day? If you're super passionate about it, you'll do anything. And I would say the nerdcore industry as a whole is really fun. It's exciting. You get to share everything. Like the projects that you love, the fan stuff that you enjoy, the IPs that everybody else can relate to. I know several people who enjoy Steven Universe. I despise the show with a living passion, but I know others enjoy it. And I still love them regardless because they have something that they're proud of. Much like I like Doom, that might not be their favorite thing either. I like Tetris and that might not be their favorite thing either. But it's great because you get to learn about each other's tastes. And from that, you can also develop peak interest about something and try more new things and talk. I think that's wonderful. Can't guarantee it always works out. I'm pretty sure that sometimes there can be disputes and sometimes arguments. That happens everywhere. This isn't just a nerdcore spectrum. This happens in every single place. And probably the worst contender is like Jersey Shore, a show built on drama. Whereas this isn't built on drama. This is just based on human instinct and nature. So what is the current state of the nerdcore industry? All of this is basically our answer. It's going down slightly. It has a chance of going up. The safest bet is to stay in the chain base. The passionate way is being able to encompass absolutely anything you want, have a lot of fun with it. At the end of the day, it's still so much fun to do. Would I stick with nerdcore? No, I'd probably like to delve into original projects as well. Put all your eggs in multiple different baskets rather than just the one. You never know which one's going to dip, because it looked like nerdcore was going to dip for a while, and it could go back on the rise again. But there's always a chance that it will die down, and we need to prepare for that at the end of the day. Want to get famous quick? Do nerdcore immediately and stick with the chain base. And that's really all you have to do. Kind of. I think a lot of the positions are already filled at the moment, but I still feel like everybody has an opportunity. But if you want to take it from me personally, Just have heart. Just have passion. Just love everything. Be open to all sorts of different games, even the chain base. I respect the chain base as much as I do the AAA base. That should be all it takes. I'll put it this way, actually, this is probably easier. The larger and more open your mind is to a lot of different games, the better you're gonna be. This is why DAGames at least encourages a lot of different games, rather than just the chain base. Because we know sometimes it's gonna flop. We don't mind, we never really did it for the viewership. Yeah, we're worried about like our stance as a whole, but I mean, we don't mind doing these little things every now and then. The more we do this, the more people learn about new games. We can't guarantee that they'll like it. That's absolutely fine too. But that's my stance as a whole. The whole video is probably going to be super long. I ranted, but it's something that I really wanted to talk about. I'm going to get going anyway, guys. If you like what you saw here, could like and subscribe, share for friends and family, maybe your dog. Check out DAGames Official on Twitter for news, information, and music, animations, let's plays, and live streams. I'm Will of DAGames. Good luck on any endeavor that you have in the future when it comes to nerdcore and anything like that. I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all very soon. Peace out!